it's using seed drive.
Displays of
Now, when we dive all the way in, we're looking at
Layer 2.0.
we're looking at an original aerial image. And so this is about as high resolution as it gets for aerial photography. We shoot from the air. We shoot both straight down and also obliquely at 45 degrees, and that's what gives you these lovely views of the facades. As we move from one photo to another, watch closely, and you'll see a kind of morph. And that morph is, of course, because when you're looking at aerial photos, every particular aerial photo was taken from one point of view. And so what we have here is a regular grid of photos taken from the air, each with its own point of view, and it's basically a photosynth. And in fact, these transitions between aerial images are very much photosynth inspired. They're using the dominant plane of the ground. They're using that geometry to make the transitions fluid and to minimize the jarring effect of moving from one point of view to another. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, then you'll see another transition. And that transition is to this unified perspective, which is taking all of those photos and stitching them together. The reason that we don't show the stitched together view all the way down is just because we wanted to provide access to the absolutely raw imagery so that there'd be no lossiness whatsoever when you went all the way in. So this is a SimCity-like view at 45 degrees, where all of those photos have been stitched together. And you can look at this from different points of view. This is looking north, looking east, and so on. And again, those transitions use that dominant plane. They have the same sort of trick underneath. Now, if we drop down to ground level, we can see some of the sorts of trellis building that we're starting to do at human scale. Now, one of the things that you noticed as we dropped down is that you saw the geometry of the street as we went in. And that's because at street level, just using single dominant planes isn't really enough to give you an immersive sense of what's going on. So, or to bind the information adequately. So what we're doing here is we're using a much more complete geometry of the surrounding environment. We're exploiting a lot of the technology that Virtual Earth built up over the years of reconstructing three-dimensional buildings and such from these aerial photographs. We're using the same techniques at ground level to reconstruct the 3D. That's why if I click on a facade, during that transition, you see we're using the geometry to interpolate between these views. And so you get something that's really very close to a three-dimensional experience, while at the same time keeping a sense of total photorealism when you're at any particular spot. We're pretty happy with how this turned out. So this is Trellis collection now from the ground using this device, right? Which probably some of you have seen on the street. We're expanding our collection of this stuff greatly over the next couple of years. Now, we showed off for the first time at TED a few weeks ago an application called StreetSide Photos, which is right now in beta. Or this is a tech preview, I guess I should say. So it's a little bit like Photosynth when we first launched it, with just some canned collections of imagery. But what we did here was to mine Creative Commons geo-registered photos out of Flickr. And the thing to remember about these geo-registered photos, whenever you take a geo-positioned photo, its position is going to be off by a lot. So in a city, it's common for it to be off by 40 meters or even by 100 meters. And if you've positioned the pushpin manually, there's even an ambiguity in people's minds about whether they put the pushpin where they were standing or maybe across the water where you're shooting. So what we do is we start with the geoposition, and we then do a photosynth-like match of the imagery to the street side. So this is a photo from 1919, which matched to our street side imagery of the Pike Place public market before a bunch of these renovations. You can see that it matched because this building has been pretty much unchanged over the past century. So this kind of locking together of imagery, in this case historic imagery, with structured imagery is a great example of Trellis plus Graves. And here in the Pike Place Market, it's kind of like Notre Dame. Many people have taken photos here. So there's a very rich, dense collection of images of the market. In fact, if you look at all of downtown, there's a pretty good there's a pretty good collection of imagery downtown, where this is up for you to explore. In many parts of the city, imagery is starting to be dense enough with the number of uploads that people are making of geotagged photos that the grapes are growing thickly on the trellis, and you really can have a sense of a timeline or of user-contributed imagery really in many places that you go. But the gap from that to be able to do full 3D reconstruction from the photos alone is still large. And that's why we're going to need to really bridge the gap between that user-contributed imagery as individual grapes and the sense of trellis. The trellis right now is driven with this. As we evolve, we're starting to collect trellis with things like this, which are much more portable and can go indoors. And of course, as we go into the coming years, I think it's reasonable to expect that these things will keep on shrinking, keep on becoming more economical, more widespread. Will be able to be used in a wider variety of different contexts, and eventually will become cheap enough that we can just kind of paint the world with devices and get this kind of imagery anywhere we want. So much for ecosystem of imagery. I hope that through this particular case with the imagery, a few things are coming across. One is the need for combining that canvas, which registers everything together, with the content that comes on top, and which in some cases is trellis-like and in some cases is disorganized, and that disorganized content uses the trellis to bind to.